Hello, this is Professor Teresa Pelkie. This is Session 12, Part 1, Using a Subquery for Selection. In this session, we'll look at how subqueries are used. A subquery is a select statement that is embedded within another select statement. In this video, we'll work with one of the simpler forms of a subquery. We'll use a subquery to generate a list of items that will be used in the where clause of a select statement. In Part 2, we'll look at other uses of subqueries. As you can see, you can sometimes use a subquery as an alternate way to write a select statement. For our example, we'll go back to the world database that we used earlier in this course. We'll be working with the two tables shown here, the city table and the country table. For our example, we want to get a list of all the cities and the city population based on the continent the city is located in. As you can see in the upper figure, the city table does not contain the continent. However, the city table does contain the country code. Using the country code, we can go to the country table shown in the lower figure. The country table does contain the continent. Because we have a relationship between the two tables, using the country code column in the city table and the code column in the country table, we will be able to select cities based on the continent that their country is located in. The first technique that we'll look at uses a simple join shown here. This join is an inner join, which is the default join type when you just use the join keyword by itself. The inner join used in this example will only select a row from the city table when there is a row in the country table. The selection occurs when the country continent value is Oceania. Now we'll look at how we can run the equivalent query, this time using a subquery. This select statement includes an embedded select statement. The embedded select statement is the subquery. In this example, the subquery gets a result set of country codes from the country table. It selects only the countries that are in the continent of Oceania. The result set, which is the list of country codes, is used in the where clause. This is a where-in type of where clause. The results of running this query are the same as running the query with the join that was on the previous slide. Let's take a closer look at the subquery itself and how the subquery is used with the main select statement. In the lower left figure, you see the results of running the subquery as an independent select statement. As you can see, the result set is a list of country code values starting with ASM. The list actually contains 19 codes. Only the first 7 are shown here. So in this example, you can see that the select statement that we are using as the subquery can be run by itself. The result set, which is the list of country code values, is used as the value list for the in clause, pointed to by the upper arrow. The subquery select statement runs inside the in clause. The result set takes the place of the comma delimited list of values shown in the lower right. Now when you use a subquery in the in clause, you don't need to be concerned about creating a comma delimited list. It is the job of the query processor to put the result values into a form that can be used in the in clause. When you use a subquery in an in clause, the subquery can only return one column. For example, you could not write the select statement for the subquery to return the code value and the name value for the country name. Look again at the where and in clause in the lower right corner. You'll see why you can only return one column from the subquery. If you did return both the country code and the country name, how could both of those column values be used in the in clause? The answer is both column values could not be used. But as shown, you can return a list of values for a single column. The subquery shown in this example is pretty simple. It just selects the code value from the country table based on a very simple where clause. But you're not limited to writing just simple select subqueries. If necessary, you can have a more complicated select statement for a subquery. The only requirement is that you return only one column. What happens if the subquery doesn't return any results? For example, what would happen if you entered an invalid continent name? The answer is the subquery would return an empty result set. The in clause would have nothing to work with, so no selections would occur in a main select statement. The end result would be an empty result set for the main select statement. So now the question is, should you use a subquery or a join? It turns out that you can usually use a join instead of a subquery. As you saw on the previous slides, the join actually looks like the easier way to write the statement. If you start looking into the subquery or join issue, you'll see that many people report that a join performs better. In some cases, the subquery might perform better. Keep in mind, when assessing performance, you may not be able to see any difference when you're working with relatively small data sets. For example, with the databases used in this course, it would be difficult to actually see a difference in performance. One reason that is sometimes given to prefer one technique over another is the ease of writing the statement. Now, in the examples that I showed, the join technique looks like the easier way to write the select. In some cases, it might be easier to write or easier to understand if you write the query using a subquery. But with SQL, the ease of writing or understanding a query is not the primary consideration. Granted, you should take some care to format your statements so that they are not just long run-on statements. But SQL is usually all about performance. So if you find that one technique, join or subquery, yields better performance, you should favor that technique regardless of how easy it is to write or comprehend the statement. You may want to go to the link shown on this slide and read through some of the discussions. The postings on this page are useful when you may want to choose one technique over another. In the next video, we'll look at other types of subqueries and see some examples of how they are used.